For years the Karnak swarm had spread across the stars like a dark wave. World after world fell to their endless fleets. The Zarathi Empire, proud and ancient, had once ruled 100 systems. Now it was reduced to only a few strongholds. Its armies were broken, its cities turned into ashes. Inside the last fortress world of Valara Prime, the Zarathi queen sat on a high command throne. Her name was Ilara, and even in her weakness she still carried the weight of her crown. She was tall and graceful, her silver skin cracked with wounds from recent battles. The crown on her head glowed faintly, a symbol of leadership she had sworn to protect until her last breath. But her empire was dying. The command chamber around her shook as enemy fire rained down from orbit. Red warning lights flashed across the walls. Advisors shouted reports of collapsing shields and failing defenses. The Queen's elite guards stood ready, though all of them knew the truth. There was no escape. Ilara closed her eyes for a moment. She thought of her people, scattered and broken across the galaxy. She thought of her ancestors, rulers who had carried the empire through wars and storms. And she thought of the oath she made when she took the crown. I will stand until the end, even if I stand alone. The end had come sooner than she expected. One of her advisors, an old counselor with trembling hands, turned toward her. "Your Majesty," he said, "you must flee. We have a secret transport ready. Please, if you die here, the Zarathi will have no future." Ilara shook her head. Her voice was calm but firm. "If I abandon this world, then I abandon my people. If I live, it must not be as a coward hiding in the shadows." Before the counselor could reply, a blast tore through the far wall. Smoke and fire filled the chamber. Enemy soldiers of the swarm rushed inside, towering insectoid creatures with jagged armor and glowing eyes. Their claws clicked, their weapons hummed with deadly energy. The Queen's guards leapt forward to protect her. The sound of blades and plasma filled the air. Screams echoed. Ilara rose slowly from her throne, weak but unafraid. She took hold of her ceremonial staff, ready to fight to her last breath. But deep inside, she knew the truth. She was facing death. Far away in orbit, another battle was being fought. A single human starfighter cut through the chaos. It was small, battered, and clearly not made for large fleet wars. Its paint was scorched, its engines coughed with smoke, but it still moved with fierce determination. Inside sat Captain Aaron Hale, a human pilot from a faraway colony world. Unlike the Zarathi, humans had no great empire in this region. They were considered minor, weak, even irrelevant to the great powers. But Aaron had ignored the warnings and chosen to fight anyway. His squadron had been destroyed hours ago. He was the last one left. His ship was nearly out of power, but his eyes still burned with determination. He saw the enemy fleet pressing down on Valara Prime. He saw the Zarathi defenses collapsing, and he made a choice. "I'm not leaving them to die," he thought. "Not while I can still move." He forced his fighter into a dive, pushing through enemy lines. Alarm signals filled his cockpit. Enemy ships fired at him from every side. He twisted and rolled, dodging by pure instinct. His small craft was slower and weaker, but he used every trick he had ever learned to slip through gaps. Finally, he broke past the blockade and entered the planet's atmosphere. Flames streaked across his cockpit as he plunged through the sky. Below him, the fortress city was burning. Back in the command chamber, Queen Ilara fought with the last of her strength. Her staff struck against the chitin armor of the Karnak soldiers, but her wounds slowed her movements. Her guards were falling one by one. The counselor tried to shield her, but a claw struck him down. A Karnak warrior, larger than the others, stepped forward. Its eyes glowed with cruel light. It raised its weapon toward the Queen. Ilara stood tall, even as her vision blurred. She whispered to herself, "If this is the end, then let it be with honor." The warrior lunged, and the ceiling above them exploded. A burning starfighter crashed through the roof, scattering stone and fire. Metal tore apart as the ship slammed into the chamber floor. From the wreckage, a figure rose, His flight suit scorched, his helmet cracked. It was Aaron Hale. He pulled off his broken helmet and looked around. Smoke filled the air, and alien soldiers hissed in shock at his sudden arrival. He held only a small plasma rifle, far weaker than their weapons. Yet his eyes did not show fear. He saw the Queen standing, cornered by enemies. He saw the dead and the dying around her, and without hesitation he raised his weapon and charged. "Get away from her!" he shouted. His shots burned into the nearest Karnak soldier, driving it back. The aliens turned toward him, claws raised, ready to tear him apart. But Aaron did not stop. He fought like a man with nothing left to lose. His rifle flashed, his fists struck, and somehow, against all odds, he pushed them away from the Queen. Alara stared in disbelief. She had seen many warriors in her life, but never a human like this. Fragile, small compared to her people, yet burning with a fire stronger than any Zarathi blade. "Who is he?" she whispered to herself. Minutes felt like hours. Aaron fought until his rifle overheated, then used broken metal as weapons. He bled from cuts, his breath ragged, but he never stepped back. Slowly, the aliens began to retreat, realizing this strange human would not fall easily. When the last Karnak soldier fled, silence filled the chamber. Smoke curled from the wreckage. Bodies lay everywhere. Aaron dropped to one knee, exhausted. He looked up at the Queen. "You're still alive," he said with a faint smile. "Good. That means it wasn't for nothing." Alara stepped closer, her silver skin still marked with blood. She looked at him with wide, uncertain eyes. No human had ever stood before her like this. Not as a servant, not as a messenger, but as a savior. "You," she said softly. "Why would you risk everything for me? For a queen not of your kind?" Aaron forced himself to stand, though his legs trembled. He met her gaze and answered simply, "Because no one deserves to face death alone." The Queen did not know what to say. Around them the city still burned and the war was far from over. But in that moment, something changed. For the first time in her life, Queen Alara felt hope, not from her armies, not from her throne, but from the courage of one human fighter who had given everything to save her. The fortress city of Velara Prime still burned. Smoke rose into the sky and the cries of survivors echoed through broken streets. Yet inside the shattered command chamber there was silence. Queen Alara stood among the ruins, staring at the human who had saved her. His armor was torn, his body bruised, but his eyes were still steady. He looked nothing like the tall warriors of the Zarathi, or the monstrous Karnak soldiers. He looked fragile, small, almost breakable. Yet he had faced death without hesitation. Her guards, what few remained, gathered around her. Their blades were still drawn, and their eyes turned suspiciously toward the human. "Your Majesty," one of them said sharply, "this creature is dangerous. We do not know his purpose." Aaron Hale heard the words, though he did not understand every tone of their alien language. Still, he understood enough. He raised his hand slowly, showing he carried no weapon now. "I'm not here to harm her," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "I came to help." The guards hissed in distrust. To them, humans were a weak and scattered species, known for trading and wandering, not for fighting in wars. None could believe that one had just crashed into their queen's chamber and fought like a hero. But Queen Alara raised her hand. "Enough," she said firmly. Her voice, though soft from pain, still carried authority. "He saved my life. Without him, we would all be dead." The guards lowered their weapons, though uneasily. Aaron's chest rose and fell as he caught his breath. He looked around at the ruins, then at the Queen. "You're wounded," he said. Alara tilted her head slightly. No one had spoken to her so directly in years. As queen, she was used to titles, bows, and careful words. But this human spoke to her as if she were simply another being. "I have endured worse," she replied. Yet when she took a step forward, her legs trembled and she nearly fell. Without thinking, Aaron caught her arm and steadied her. Her guards gasped in shock at the sight of a human touching their queen. But Alara did not pull away. For the first time since the war began, she allowed someone else to hold her up. They made their way through the burning halls of the fortress. Every corner was filled with smoke and falling stone. Soldiers and servants rushed to see their queen alive. When they saw the human beside her, whispers spread quickly. "Is that a human? He saved her?" "Impossible. He looked so weak. The Queen ignored the voices. She guided Aaron toward the surviving command center, where her council had regrouped. The counselors, dressed in robes marked with silver crests, turned in shock as the two entered. "Alara," cried the eldest, bowing quickly. "We feared you had fallen. How did you escape?" Alara gestured toward Aaron. Because of him. Every counselor's eyes turned toward the human. Some were filled with suspicion, others with disbelief. One of them, a sharp-eyed woman with long golden markings across her skin, frowned deeply. "A human?" she said. "Your Majesty, with respect, humans are not warriors. They are wanderers, traitors, dreamers. Why would one risk his life for you?" Aaron stood silently as the aliens judged him. He had no interest in convincing them. He had only done what felt right. Still, he spoke when the silence stretched too long. "Because she was about to die," he said simply, "and I couldn't just watch." The counselors looked at one another. His words made no sense to them. For the Zarathi, every action was tied to duty, honor, or gain. Saving someone of another species without reason was unheard of. Alara, however, kept her eyes on him. There was no lie in his voice. Later, when the fires outside were under control, Alara called for Aaron to meet her privately. They stood on a high balcony overlooking the ruined city. The stars above were still filled with enemy ships, though for now the swarm had pulled back to regroup. Alara leaned against the railing, her body weak, but her spirit unbroken. Aaron stood a few steps away, arms folded, watching the sky. "You fight like no human I have seen," she said at last. "Where are you from?" Aaron thought for a moment. "A colony world. Far from here. We don't have much. Just small towns, farms, and ships. It's nothing like your empire. Then why fight in our war? What is this to you?" He turned toward her, his face lit by the glow of the burning city below. "Because I couldn't sit back and do nothing. I've seen what the swarm does. If they take you, they'll keep going. One day they'll reach us too. And even if they didn't," he paused, his voice softening, "I couldn't watch people die when I had the chance to help." Alara studied him closely. His words were simple, almost too simple, yet there was something powerful behind them. He did not speak of duty or politics. He spoke of choice. A choice made from the heart, not from a throne. "You are strange, human," she said. "Strange. And perhaps dangerous," Aaron gave a faint smile. "People tell me that a lot." Days passed. The Zarathi began rebuilding their defenses, though everyone knew the swarm would return soon. Queen Alara remained in command, giving orders with quiet strength. Yet she found her thoughts often drifting toward the human who now walked their halls. Aaron repaired his starfighter with his own hands, using scraps and parts no Zarathi engineer would dare touch. He trained alongside the soldiers, showing them tricks of quick movement and surprise tactics. The Zarathi warriors laughed at first, mocking his small size and fragile frame, but when they saw how he outsmarted them in practice drills, their laughter turned into respect. One day during a training session, a Zarathi captain challenged him in front of the soldiers. The captain was twice Aaron's size, armored in shining silver and armed with a heavy blade. "You are no warrior," the captain declared. "Show us why the queen protects you." Aaron had no blade, only a wooden staff he had carved for practice. The soldiers gathered in a circle. The fight began. The captain charged, swinging his blade with crushing force. Aaron moved quickly, dodging each strike by inches. He tapped the captain's legs, his arms, his back, never striking to wound, only to show weakness. Within minutes, the captain grew angry, swinging harder and harder until finally he stumbled and fell. Aaron stood over him, calm and steady. "Strength is not enough," he said. "You have to think. You have to adapt." The soldiers, who had doubted him, now bowed their heads in silent respect. Even the captain rose and gave a nod of honor. From her balcony, Queen Alara watched the scene. A small smile touched her lips. She had lived her life surrounded by warriors. Yet none had fought like this human, light on his feet, sharp in his mind, unbroken in his spirit. That evening, Alara met with her council again. "The swarm will return," one counselor warned. "Our fleets are broken. We cannot hold them back. Perhaps it is time to retreat deeper into the stars," another said. "Hide, rebuild, and wait for their hunger to pass." Alara shook her head. "If we run now, there will be no rebuilding. They will chase us until nothing remains." Her council fell silent. They had no answers. Aaron, who had been standing at the edge of the chamber, finally spoke. "You're fighting them the wrong way," he said. The counselors turned in shock. A human daring to speak in the Queen's War Council? "What do you mean?" Ilara asked calmly. Aaron stepped forward. His voice was steady, his eyes bright. "You fight them like they're just another army. But they're not. They don't fear death. They don't care about losses. You can't beat them by meeting them head-on. You need to fight differently. Strike where they're not ready. Move fast, hit hard, and disappear. Make them chase shadows until they break apart." The counselors scoffed. "Ridiculous," one said. "That is not how empires fight wars." But Ilara's gaze stayed on him. She remembered how he had faced death with nothing but a broken rifle and still survived. Perhaps his way was not ridiculous. Perhaps it was what they needed. "Tell me more," she said. Aaron looked at her surprised, but then he nodded. "I will." That night, as the stars burned with enemy ships, Queen Ilara sat alone in her chamber. She thought of the human's words. She thought of his courage, his strange way of fighting, and the way he looked at her not as a queen but as a person. For the first time since the war began, she felt something more than duty. She felt a spark of hope, and it had come from a stranger among royals. The stars above Velara Prime were not calm. The Karnak swarm had returned. Their ships, dark and countless, filled the skies like a storm. The broken Zarathi defenses strained under the pressure. Every hour, another line of soldiers fell, another shield collapsed, another city burned. Inside the Zarathi War Council chamber, the atmosphere was heavy. Queen Ilara sat at the head of the long table, her silver skin pale from recent wounds, but her eyes sharp as steel. Around her stood her counselors, captains, and officers. Among them at the far edge of the room was Aaron Hale, the lone human fighter who had saved her days earlier. The counselors spoke in worried voices. "The enemy grows stronger," one said. "They cannot be stopped," another whispered. "Our fleets are scattered. Our ground forces are too few." A silence followed. No one dared suggest surrender, yet no one could see a path forward. Then Aaron's voice broke the silence. "You're fighting them the wrong way." The council turned toward him with frowns. Some narrowed their eyes. A human, speaking in a Zarathi war council, was still shocking. But Ilara lifted her hand, signaling for him to continue. Aaron stepped forward. He looked around the table, meeting the doubtful stares without fear. "The swarm fights like a wave," he said. "They throw everything forward until the enemy breaks. You can't stop a wave by standing still in front of it. You need to make it break itself. You need to strike from the side, from the shadows where they don't expect you." A tall counselor slammed his fist on the table. "Nonsense. Our empire has always met its enemies head-on. To hide, to strike and run, it is dishonor." Aaron met his gaze steadily. "And where has that honor brought you? Half your empire is already gone, your fleets keep fighting the same way, and the swarm keeps winning. You keep losing because you keep doing what they expect." The counselor bristled, ready to argue, but Queen Ilara raised her voice. "Enough." She turned her eyes toward Aaron. "You speak boldly, human. What do you suggest?" Aaron took a deep breath. "Let me lead a small strike force. Not a fleet, not an army. Just a handful of ships. We'll move fast, hit their supply lines, destroy their breeding ships, sabotage their command nodes. They'll be forced to chase us, and in chasing, they'll spread themselves thin. That will give you time to rebuild." The chamber erupted in noise. "Impossible. Too risky. Madness." But Ilara lifted her hand again, silencing them. She studied Aaron carefully. She remembered the moment he had saved her life, standing against impossible odds with nothing but courage. Now, he stood in front of her people with the same fire in his eyes. Finally, she spoke. "We will try it." The next days were filled with preparation. Aaron trained Zarathi pilots and soldiers in his style of warfare. At first, they laughed. "Hide and run? This is no strategy. You are weak, human. You cannot teach warriors." But when Aaron led them into drills, their laughter faded. He showed them how to use speed instead of strength, how to strike quickly and vanish before the enemy could react. He taught them to use traps, ambushes, and tricks that confused even the most disciplined fighters. One training match stood out. Aaron and 5 Zarathi pilots faced 10 of the Queen's best warriors in a mock battle. Within minutes, Aaron's team had struck from unexpected angles, disabled the larger ships, and disappeared. The match ended with the Queen's best warriors defeated without understanding how. Elara watched from above, her eyes thoughtful. She began to see what the human meant. Soon the strike force was ready. It was small, only a few fast ships, lightly armed, but quick. The Queen herself came to see them off. She stood tall in her silver armor, though her body still carried scars from her near death. She looked at Aaron, who wore only a simple human pilot suit patched many times. His ship was old and battered, but his eyes burned with determination. "Human," she said quietly, so only he could hear. "You carry the weight of more than your own people now. You carry the hope of mine as well." Aaron gave a faint smile. "Then I won't let it break." The Queen nodded once. Then she stepped back, allowing the strike force to launch. Their first mission came quickly. A Karnak supply convoy was moving through the outer system, guarded by a dozen warships. Aaron led the Zarathi pilots in silence. His voice came calm through the comms. "Stay hidden until I signal. Remember, speed and surprise. Don't meet them head-on." The ships moved through asteroid fields, using the rocks as cover. The convoy moved in a slow line, unaware of danger. Then Aaron gave the signal. In a flash, the strike force erupted from hiding. They cut into the convoy from the side, striking at the supply ships before the escorts could react. Explosions filled the void. The enemy scrambled, firing wildly, but the Zarathi ships danced away before being hit. Within minutes, the convoy was destroyed, and the strike force was gone, vanishing back into the asteroids. When they returned to Velara Prime, the soldiers cheered. They had destroyed more enemy ships in one mission than they had in weeks of battles. The council, though still cautious, could not deny the results, and Queen Elara, watching Aaron stand proudly among her warriors, felt something she had not felt in a long time: hope. But the swarm was not blind. Soon, the enemy began to adjust. They sent larger fleets to hunt the strike force. Traps were laid, ambushes prepared. Each mission grew harder than the last. One night, as Aaron returned from another dangerous raid, he found Queen Elara waiting in the hangar. She looked at him with concern. "You risk too much," she said. "Every time you fly, I fear it will be the last." Aaron wiped sweat and smoke from his face. "If I don't, we lose everything. You know that." Her eyes softened, though her voice stayed firm. "You are one man. Why do you carry so much weight on your shoulders?" He looked at her for a long moment. Then he answered quietly, "Because someone has to. And I can't watch the galaxy burn while I do nothing." For a moment, Elara felt her heart shift. She had seen warriors fight for duty, for glory, for empire. But this human fought for something different. He fought simply because he refused to give up. The turning point came when the swarm sent a massive fleet to surround Velara Prime. Their ships filled the skies again, larger and deadlier than before. In the War Council, panic spread. "We cannot survive this. Our defenses will fall in hours." Aaron stood at the table, his jaw set. "Then we hit them before they hit us. Not with fleets, with speed. We strike their command ship, take out the heart, and the body will fall." The councilors erupted in protest. "Impossible. Suicide. No one can break through that fleet." But Queen Elara's voice cut through the noise. "He has faced the impossible before, and he has won." Her words silenced the chamber. Aaron looked at her, and for a moment their eyes met in unspoken understanding. They both knew what was coming. The greatest battle yet. The most dangerous mission of all. That night, as the enemy fleet gathered above, Aaron stood alone on the hangar deck staring at the stars. His ship, patched and weary, waited for him. Queen Elara approached quietly. She stood beside him without speaking for a while. Finally, she said, "You should not have to bear this alone." Aaron gave a tired smile. "I'm human. We're used to carrying more than we should." She looked at him, her voice soft. You are more than human, Aaron Hale. You are hope itself. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then the alarm sirens began to wail, echoing through the fortress. The swarm was coming. Aaron straightened, his eyes hard. Then let's show them why humans never give up. The Karnak swarm had come in full strength. Their fleet stretched across the heavens like a wall of steel and fire. Countless dark ships moved as one, their glowing eyes aimed at the last Zarathi stronghold. Their weapons hummed, waiting for the command to burn the planet to ashes. Inside the fortress city, fear spread like smoke. Soldiers stood at their posts, though many trembled at the size of the enemy. Citizens huddled in shelters praying for a miracle. Even the counselors who had once spoken with confidence now whispered with shaking voices. Queen Alara stood in the war chamber, her silver armor polished but heavy with the weight of command. She looked up at the battle map where the enemy fleet covered the skies. Around her, counselors spoke in panic. They outnumber us 10-1. Our shields will not hold. This is the end. Alara listened, but her eyes drifted toward the only person not speaking, Aaron Hale, the human fighter. He stood near the edge of the chamber, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the map. His face was tired from weeks of battles, his uniform patched from countless fights, yet his spirit had not broken. Finally she spoke. Captain Hale, what do you see? Aaron stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. I see one chance. And only one. The counselors leaned forward. What chance? Aaron pointed at the largest ship in the enemy fleet, a massive vessel glowing with strange light. That ship controls them all. It's their command node, their hive mind. Destroy it and the swarm will fall into chaos. The chamber fell silent. Everyone stared at him in disbelief. That ship is guarded by the entire fleet, one counselor said. No one could reach it, another argued. It would be suicide, a third whispered. Aaron nodded slowly. Yes, it's almost impossible, but it's the only way. Later, when the council dispersed in despair, Alara remained with Aaron. She walked to the balcony, where the burning skies painted her face in shades of red. Aaron joined her, his eyes following the endless lines of enemy ships. You mean to go yourself? She said softly. Aaron did not look at her. Someone has to. You will die, she said. Her voice trembled, though she tried to keep it steady. I cannot ask you to give your life for my people. He finally turned to her. You didn't ask. I chose this, just like I chose to save you that day. This isn't about orders. It's about doing what has to be done. For a long moment, they stood in silence. The Queen, burdened by the fate of her people and the human, ready to give everything for a cause that was not even his own. You are a strange man, Aaron Hale, Alara whispered. Strange. And brave beyond reason. He smiled faintly. That's what makes us human. The next morning, preparations began. Aaron selected a small group of volunteer pilots from the Zarathi ranks. They were the ones who had fought beside him in raids, who had learned his ways of speed and surprise. They knew it was a mission from which they might not return, yet none stepped back. The hangar buzzed with activity. Ships were fueled, weapons loaded, engines tested. Soldiers lined the walls to watch. Some saluted Aaron as he walked by. Others whispered his name with awe. To them, this human had become more than a fighter. He had become a symbol. Queen Alara came to the hangar in full armor, though her wound still ached. She approached Aaron as he checked his ship one last time. You do not have to do this, she said quietly. You have already given more than anyone could ask. Aaron looked at her, his face calm. If I don't, they win. And if they win, there will be nothing left worth saving. She lowered her eyes for a moment. Then she lifted them again, her voice strong. Then may the stars guide you, human, and may you return to me. Aaron gave a small smile, but he did not promise. He could not. The mission began. The small strike force launched from Velara Prime, slipping into the vast sea of enemy ships. They moved fast, dodging patrols, weaving through gaps, using every trick Aaron had taught them. But the swarm was ready. Alarms lit across the enemy fleet. Fighters poured out like angry hornets, chasing the intruders. The sky became a storm of fire. Aaron's voice echoed through the comms. Stay sharp, stay fast. Don't fight them head-on. Keep moving. The Zarathi pilots followed his lead. They twisted, turned, dove through impossible gaps. Enemy fire lit the skies, but Aaron's squadron struck back with precision. Explosions flashed around them as enemy fighters fell. Still, the losses grew. One Zarathi ship was torn apart. Another spun into flames. Yet Aaron kept pushing forward. His eyes locked on the massive command ship ahead. "There it is," he said. "The heart of the swarm." Back in the fortress, Queen Alara watched from the command center. The battle map showed tiny lights representing Aaron's squadron, moving closer to the heart of the enemy. Her hands tightened on the railing. Every moment she feared the next light would vanish. "Why does he fight so hard?" one counselor whispered. "He is not one of us," Alara's voice was steady. "Because he is more than us. He is human." The battle grew fiercer as Aaron's squadron neared the command ship. Enemy cruisers closed in, their weapons blazing. The Zarathi pilots fought bravely, but more and more were lost. Finally, only 3 remained, Aaron and 2 Zarathi fighters. The command ship loomed before them, a giant fortress in the stars. "We'll never break through," one pilot cried. "Yes, we will," Aaron said firmly. "Stay with me, just a little longer." They dove into the storm of fire, weaving between blasts, dodging beams of energy that could shatter a mountain. One by one, the last Zarathi fighters were struck down. At last, Aaron was alone. His ship was battered, his shields gone, his weapons nearly empty. Smoke filled the cockpit, warning lights flashing everywhere, but his eyes stayed locked on the glowing core of the enemy command ship. "This is it," he whispered to himself. No turning back. He pushed his ship forward faster and faster. Enemy fire tore into him, ripping his wings apart, but still he pressed on. He armed the last of his weapons, set his course straight into the heart of the enemy. Back in the fortress, Alara watched in silence. She could not breathe, could not look away. She knew what he was about to do. "Aaron," she whispered, her voice breaking. The human fighter burst through the outer hull of the command ship, flames trailing behind. Inside, alarms rang across the alien vessel as Aaron's ship tore through corridors of steel and light. He aimed straight for the glowing heart of the hive mind. At the last moment, he closed his eyes. A memory of Alara's face flashed before him. The queen he had saved, the queen he had fought beside, the queen he now left behind. Then he whispered his final words. "For them. For her. For all of us." And his ship struck the core. The explosion lit the skies like a second sun. The command ship shattered, its glowing heart torn apart. Across the fleet, the swarm screamed in chaos. Their movements faltered. Their ships spun out of control, colliding with each other, falling silent one by one. The Zarathi forces cheered. The enemy fleet was broken. But in the command center, Queen Alara did not cheer. She stood in silence, her silver eyes filled with tears she had never shown before. "A human gave everything," she whispered. "And because of him, we still live." In orbit above Velara Prime, the remaining Karnak swarm ships drifted, powerless. Their command corps destroyed, they were no longer organized, no longer a threat. The fleet that had seemed endless moments before was now broken, scattered, and confused. On the surface, the people of the Zarathi Empire slowly emerged from hiding. Soldiers lowered their weapons. Citizens stepped out of shelters, blinking at the sight of a sky no longer filled with enemy fire. Smoke still rose from the ruined cities, but hope, fragile yet bright, filled the hearts of all who survived. Inside the fortress command center, Queen Alara stood motionless, staring at the communication screens that displayed the aftermath of the battle. The last signals from Aaron Hale's squadron had gone silent long before the explosion. Her heart sank. She knew. He was gone. The Zarathi council gathered around her, their faces grim but filled with awe. "He did it," one whispered. "He destroyed their command corps. His ship, there is no sign of him," another said. "The human, he gave everything," a third said softly. Alara's eyes, silver and glowing faintly in the dim light, filled with tears. She had seen many warriors, many heroes of her people. She had seen the brave fall in battle countless times, but this was different. A human, a small, fragile creature so different from her towering warriors, had faced impossible odds and given his life for her people. For her, and because of him, the Zarathi Empire still stood. Hours later, Alara walked through the ruins of the command chamber. Smoke curled around broken consoles and shattered walls. Her guards and soldiers followed silently, their heads bowed in respect. She paused at the spot where Aaron's ship had crashed inside the fortress. Scorch marks marred the floor, twisted metal scattered everywhere. She knelt and placed her hand on the scorched ground. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. Aaron Hale, you were not my soldier. You were not even my subject, and yet you gave everything to save us. A murmur ran through the soldiers behind her. Some bowed their heads. Some placed their hands over their hearts. The human who had saved their queen had become something more than a stranger. He had become a symbol. In the days that followed, the Zarathi Empire began to rebuild. The survivors worked tirelessly to repair their cities and fleets. The scars of battle were everywhere, but the spirit of the people was unbroken. Queen Alara took her place among them, walking through the streets, speaking to her people, giving orders, and ensuring that no one would forget the sacrifice that had saved them all. And though she continued her duties as queen, her mind often drifted to the human fighter who had given everything. Stories of Aaron Hale spread quickly among the survivors. Pilots who had flown alongside him spoke of his bravery, his clever tactics, and his unwavering determination. Soldiers who had seen him fight told tales of how a single human had changed the course of the war. Children who had watched the sky light up in the final battle whispered his name with awe and wonder. Even the counselors, once doubtful and skeptical, acknowledged what the human had done. He had not just fought. He had inspired. He had reminded them all of a simple truth. Courage is not measured by size or strength, but by heart and will. Weeks passed, and the swarm no longer threatened the borders of the Zarathi Empire. The scattered remnants of their fleet were either destroyed or fled to distant, uncharted regions of space. Peace, fragile but precious, returned to the galaxy. Alara stood on the balcony of her palace, overlooking the rebuilt city of Velara Prime. Ships moved in the distance, repairing and patrolling, preparing for the future. She felt the weight of her crown, the responsibility of her people, and the memory of the human who had saved them all. She spoke softly, almost to herself. Aaron Hale, you showed us what it means to fight with courage, with heart, with honor beyond the limits of fear. You are gone, yet your spirit remains. Months later, monuments were built in his honor. In every city that had survived, in every hall of the palace, in every fleet dock, a simple statue stood, a human, small in size but strong in stance, holding his rifle as if ready to face the stars. The inscription read, Aaron Hale, human fighter. Gave everything for life, for hope, for others. The people came to honor him. Children placed flowers at the base of his statue. Soldiers saluted before marching into battle drills. Even the Zarathi warriors who had once mocked humans as weak, now trained by the human's example, learning the lessons of courage, cunning, and sacrifice. Queen Alara herself visited the statue often. She touched its cold metal, imagining the man who had stood before impossible odds and never wavered. Time passed, but the story of Aaron Hale never faded. It became legend. Scholars wrote of the human who had turned the tide of a galactic war. Pilots told of his daring maneuvers. Parents whispered to their children that bravery could come from the smallest person. The queen made a decision that would echo through history. She issued a decree to honor humanity. Every fleet, every city, and every academy in the Zarathi Empire would remember the human spirit. A new generation of warriors was trained not just to fight with strength, but to think with courage, to act with heart, and to never give up, even when the odds were impossible. In the quiet moments, Alara would look up at the stars. She imagined Aaron among them, free from war, soaring among distant suns. She felt a mixture of sorrow and gratitude. He had given everything, his life, his courage, his hope, for a queen, for a people, for a future, and in return he had changed an empire forever. The galaxy moved on. New stars were explored. Old worlds were rebuilt. Battles came and went, but the memory of Aaron Hale remained. He became a symbol of the human spirit, unpredictable, unyielding, unstoppable. Even centuries later, historians would tell the story of the human who stood against impossible odds, who faced death for those he did not know, who inspired an entire empire to rise again. The Zarathi Empire, once broken and battered, became stronger than ever. But no matter how strong they became, Queen Alara knew the truth that no victory or fleet could erase. It was a human's courage that had saved them all. And so, across the galaxy, in every city and on every planet that had been touched by the swarm, one name was remembered above all others: Aaron Hale, a human, a fighter, a hero,